Hi everyone, welcome back to Feather Stitch House. My name's Rebecca and each week on this channel I upload videos about embroidery and textile art to help you get creative. Now every year we complete a project called Winging It. This is a 52-week project made up of improvised textile art pieces to help take some of the fear away from experimenting with your textiles and threads. So this year we've been creating a fabric journal, and this month we've taken inspiration from the night sky, and in particular the summer solstice, which happens this week on Thursday the 20th of June, and the planetary parade that happened right back at the beginning of the month on June the 3rd, and that was an occasion where 6 planets formed a straight line in the night sky. And although a planetary alignment isn't unusual, 6 planets is a little bit out of the ordinary, so that's where we've taken our inspiration. I try and make each of these pieces relate to our own lives and experience as we're progressing through 2024, and this week is the halfway mark really of our year, and so last week and this week's video have been all about setting intentions for how we want the rest of the year to go and any changes that we might need to make in our lives to bring good things our way. Last week's intentions looked outward and focused on our relationships with other people in the world. And through no planning whatsoever, our intentions this week are going to look in. So we're going to focus on ourselves and our own lives this week. And so I hope that there's something here that gets you thinking about the things that might improve your own life, mental health and well-being. So gather some bits and pieces and let's get stitching. So this is where we got up to last week. We made our first 3 planets in our planet parade, and tucked behind we have our little notes that contain our intentions. Keep forgetting that I made the opening in a slightly different direction on this one. So we've got our little labels, and we're going to focus today on the remaining 3 planets. So the next one we're going to look at is Mars. That one was next in the sky. So if you remember, we're not doing these in the order that they appear in the solar system. This is the order in which they were visible in the sky during the planetary parade on the 3rd of June. So we're going to do Mars. Now Mars, as you know, is referred to as the red planet, and it is a kind of red-orange colour. So I've got some Japanese yarn dye here, and I've already done a little bit of prep on this one. So I've got my 3 little pads cut out, and I've marked in my Mars circle. So I'm just going to start by cutting around that with the border. Now if you need more of a steer on how to make this, then I went through it in quite a lot of detail in last week's video. So I will link that video at the top of the screen, just in a little card up here, and you can go back and watch the process. I will kind of outline what I'm doing, but I'll go a bit faster this week. So I've drawn around my planet template, and I've cut it out with a little bit of border, and I've also cut a little scrap of wadding in the same size, and now I'm just snipping around the edge just up to my line, so that when we turn these in we've got less bulk. Those little tabs are going to overlap each other to give us a nice shape. I think I'm going to just pop that on the back there and tack it in place. So we've been sort of making these little quilted padded planets to create some secret pockets that our intentions can go inside. So Mars is slightly smaller than planet Earth, has about 40% of our gravity, and NASA is planning to send a manned mission there in the next few years. You can go onto the NASA website and see pictures from the Mars rover that's currently there. So it's totally obvious now that I've seen it, but when I first looked, it was a little bit of a shock that Mars had a sky. I always think about these planets just floating in space and don't really think about them having their own atmosphere, but of course it does. I just expected it to be the surface of the planet and then just the darkness of space, but it's not like that at all. It's funny the ideas we get into our heads. Right, so I've drawn around my Mars template. So that one is that size, just on my fabric. And I'm going to just cut it out square while I'm stitching on it. And then we can trim it back. So Mars is kind of, it's got lots of rocky surface, and I'm going to stitch it in this variegated perle or pearl cotton, anchor pearl cotton, and it's very sort of rocky. I thought it might be nice to do some knots on this one, just to illustrate the sort of mountainous regions. Do you think it's got a volcano on the surface that is absolutely gigantic? Is it the biggest volcano in the solar system, maybe? I don't know. So we'll start off with some French knots, I think. So I'm just coming in from the edge and we're just going to do clusters of knots. So to do a French knot, we're going to hold the thread towards ourselves, sit the needle across it on the surface, and I'm going to just wrap, let's do 3 times, and I'm going to tip my needle back and just put it through, not quite where the thread came out, but very close to it. And then before I do anything else, I'm just going to pull on that working thread so that those wraps sit on the surface of the fabric. And then I can pull through, keeping tension on that working thread, and that will give me a nice tight French knot. Sometimes you will find it easier, just got a little bit of frayed thread there, you might find it easier to put your fabric flat on a surface while you're doing the wrapping. And we can vary the size of these, so every now and again I'll just do a smaller knot. I do like a French knot. Let's jump down here a little bit. We'll do a few smaller ones. We were looking, if you remember, at the origin of the name of our planets, and they're all based on Roman mythological gods. And we were saying last week that probably, as most of you watching are women, probably that's quite hard to relate to. And so what I thought we would do is look at the female counterparts of those gods. And as I was looking at these female counterparts, I realised that there was a harmony that I could not possibly have foreseen. So those 3 are all about our relationships with others. So our children or the earth, our life partner or our closest friends, and people that we've lost touch with. And when I was looking at our planets for this week, I realised that they are far more inward looking. So our first three planets look out, and our planets today are going to look in. So they are going to focus more on ourselves and our intentions for ourselves. So we've covered our wider relationships, and now we're going to think about what's going on with us. And before I do that, let me just bring this up a little bit. There we go. So I've got lots of French knots there. I am going to add some more, but I'm going to do a different type of knot as well now. So just wanted to show you where we're up to. So I also want to add some bullion knots in here. And these are, people have a love-hate relationship with bullion knots. I am going to put one across here, but let's just do one in a more open space on here so that you can see what I'm doing. Right, so we're going to start by bringing our needle through, and when you're making a jump on the back, it's really important that you don't pull too tight because you will just pucker up your planet. So you just want your thread comfortably flat on the back. I've brought it through. I'm going to think about how long a knot I want to make. So I'm going to make one that's about maybe 1/2 centimetre. And I'm going to take my needle back in 1/2 centimetre away from where that thread's coming out, and rock my needle forward, come back out at my starting point. So we come out, go back in, and come out back at our starting point. And I'm not going to pull my needle through. I'm just going to leave it sitting in the fabric like that. Now I'm right-handed, so I tend to use my left first finger to lift that needle off the surface of the fabric, because what we're going to do is wrap the thread around the needle. So I'm going to wrap clockwise, and I'm going to keep wrapping until the length of the wraps on the needle are roughly matched with the space of the fabric that is caught on the needle. So I've got about 1/2 centimetre here of fabric, and I've got about 1/2 centimetre there of wrapped thread. So I'm going to stop wrapping now, and I'm going to grab those wraps in between my first finger and my thumb. I'm going to keep hold of those, not so tightly that I can't move, but tight enough that they don't move around too much. And then I'm going to pull my needle through. Now, I'm not using a straw needle here, I just haven't wrapped very tight, so they've come through quite easily. As you pull, those wraps are going to fold back on themselves and will sit back down on the surface of the fabric, covering up that bit of thread that we left. So I'm just pulling it through until it's relatively tight, and then I'm going to take my needle back through at the point where those wraps end. I can pull it a little bit more, and that's a bullion knot. So it's just sitting nicely. It's not the neatest bullion knot I've ever done, I have to say. It's always trickier when I'm talking you through it while I'm making the stitch. So let me do it again. We'll do one that crosses over. So we're going to bring our thread out, choose the length of the knot and go back in to the fabric and rock the needle so that it comes back out where the thread initially came out. I'm going to put my finger underneath that needle to keep it off the surface, and I'm going to do some wraps. I think I could have done with another couple of wraps on that last stitch, so I'm going to go with that. So I've got the fabric hooked onto the needle and then the wrapped threads on the needle. So I'm going to hold those wraps with my first finger and thumb. If you find that the needle won't pull through, you can just roll your finger and thumb backwards and forwards like that, and that helps the wraps move off the needle. And then we keep pulling, let the wraps fold back on themselves, sit on the fabric, and then we can take our thread back through. And what's starting to happen now is that we're getting that variegation coming. So we've got some knots that are slightly different colours now. So I want to keep doing some knots while we talk about Mars. Now Mars will be one that I'm sure you all know because of the Planet Suite. Gustav Holst wrote the Planet Suite, and each of the movements in that is named after the planet, and the music reflects the sort of characteristics of that Roman god that the planet was named after. And so there is a precedent in art and culture for taking inspiration from these things. So I'm not suggesting that what we're making is quite the equivalent of Planet Suite, but people have been taking inspiration from the planets and the stars for centuries. So we're part of a good tradition here. So Mars, as I'm sure you know, was the god of war. Not my thing, really. So I was really hoping that the female counterpart, I thought, oh, crikey, if we've got Neptune, who's the god of the sky, and Gaia, who's the goddess of the earth, and if we've got all those sort of opposites coming in, let's hope that the female counterpart for Mars is the goddess of peace. But alas, she's not. So she is also to do with battle, but it's a little bit more nuanced. So I was quite pleased about that. So in Roman mythology, the female counterpart of Mars is a goddess that has two names. She's known by Nerien or Nerio. That's who Mars's female counterpart was. She's apparently Mars's wife, and she was linked with battle and valour, but she was also connected with wisdom and victory. So I thought it would be good to think about an area of our life where we need a bit of victory and we need a bit of valour. So is there an aspect of life where we need a little bit of courage, or we need a bit of a breakthrough, we need a bit of strategy, how to overcome? And I thought that would be a good way of reflecting on planet Mars. So I suppose it is, in a way, about war, but it's not about a violent war. It's about overcoming or battling our doubts and our lack of confidence. I've got a sweatshirt that I had for, it's like a hoodie that I got for a World Book Day. Oh gosh, must be close to 10 years ago now. And we were all asked, the whole English department was asked to choose a quote from Shakespeare to have printed on the front of these hoodies. And I chose one that I find really powerful. So it's from the play Measure for Measure, and it goes, I might misquote it, don't come for me. It goes something like, our doubts are traitors that make us lose the good we oft might win by fearing to attempt. And if Shakespeare is not your thing and that sounds like gobbledygook, then it basically means that our doubts lie to us, they betray us, and they make us miss out on really great things by making us too scared to try something new. And so I love that quote, and it's been a bit of a guiding principle of my life. So I'm not saying that I always break through and act courageously, but I do at least try and live with an awareness that if I'm doubting, I might actually miss out. And so I've tried far more the older I've got to think, what's the worst that can happen, and go for it anyway. So yeah, that's what I thought would be a good meditation to have, or a good thing to ponder while we're stitching. So is there anything in your life that you need to overcome, that you need to battle through, that you need a bit of victory with? Is there a challenge that you are facing that you need to push through on, that you need a bit of courage to get past? As you're stitching, have a little think, and in a minute we'll come to our intentions, and that's what we'll put inside our little planet. So this is a personal thing for you rather than something for somebody else. I am quite liking the way my planet Mars is shaping up with all these little textured stitches. It's cute. A lot of people think bullion knots look like maggots, but I just like them. I do find that certain colours work and other ones don't. So I think if I stitch them in white, I often will agree that they look slightly maggoty. And I do think that when you stitch them in red or pink, they have a tendency to look intestinal, if that's not too disgusting. But I think I'm getting away with this little orangey colour. I think this is a colour that doesn't have any grim connotations. I'm sure somebody out there will have one. And then I won't be able to stitch them in orange either. There we go. Got lots of little knots and textures on there that I think will look really cute when I make it up into a planet. So I'm going to trim around, leaving a bit of a border. Do my snips, and then I can just finger press these tabs back just to help form the shape. Oh, I've just remembered that I stitched around on the other ones. I've stitched around, let me bring it in. I've stitched around the edge with a whipped back stitch, and they're all like that. So I'm going to do that before I stitch it together. All I'm going to do, I won't film it because I did it in quite a lot of detail last week. I'm going to fold these little tabs over the batting and put the two layers together like that, and then just ladder stitch around the outside. And like I say, I went through that in quite a lot of detail last week, so I'm not going to make you watch that again. So I'm just going to stitch around the edge, put that together, and then we'll write our intention. Okay, I have attached my little Mars with my pocket. So all I've done is stitched around with a whip stitch and just started at 1 o'clock, finished at about 11 o'clock, which leaves a little pocket. And I've got my red handmade paper that I was using last week, and I'm going to write my intention. So I'm not going to do this on camera, but I will start by writing Nerio is the female counterpart of Mars. Nerio, Valor and Victory. There we go. So Nerio, Valor and Victory. I'm going to write my intention. So what I want to be victorious in, what I need to be a little bit more brave in. Okay, so I've got my little note, my intention, and in it goes. I'm really loving this. I'm having so much fun with this panel. It's a lot more simple than some of the others that we've done, but I think it's looking super cute. Right, so Neptune comes next, and Neptune is an ice blue planet, and I've got a little bit of fabric here. Um, when we were using this fabric last week, yeah, I said it was like the bag inside a pillow that the pillow filling was contained in, that was kind of waste fabric that I tie-dyed. This also was a different filling, and it didn't take the dye very well. It's a lot more polyester in it. You probably see the sheen, and so it only just took the dye, but it turns out it's perfect for this. So Neptune, it's an ice blue planet, and Neptune obviously is the Roman god of the sea, so his Greek equivalent is Poseidon, and Neptune's wife was a goddess called Salacea, and she also was the goddess of water, but she's more commonly linked with fresh water than she is with seawater, salt water. So I'm going to use this lovely sky blue. We did use it on Uranus, but I'm going to try and get the more blue section rather than picked up some grey as well on this one. I'm going to try and focus on the bluer tones, and I thought that the stitch that probably will work best on this is chain stitch, because it looks like little water droplets. So for chain stitch, very similar to a fly stitch or blanket stitch, we make a loop and then catch it. So I'm going to bring my thread up, I'm going to take my needle down back where that thread came up, which makes a loop, and then I'm going to rock my needle and come up inside the loop. So I need to make sure my needle passes over that working thread, and then I'm just going to hop over the loop and put a little straight stitch over it to hold that loop in place. And I'm just going to put some water droplets on this. I might come in with another shade of blue in a minute. Salacea or Salacea, she's a water goddess from Roman mythology. So she is a goddess of the sea and of spring water. And that immediately got me thinking about refreshing, the idea of refreshment. And it's been really cold again here in the UK. We've been caught in a blast of air from the Arctic, and so it was looking like things were warming up, and it's gone so cold we've had to put our heating back on the last couple of days. It's been getting down to sort of 7 degrees at night. That's Celsius, 7 Celsius, and it's only been up to about 13 or 14 degrees during the day, so it has been really quite chilly. And for June, that's all wrong, because June should be the time of ice cream and strawberries and sitting in the garden drinking Pimm's or gin or something. And it's too cold, but normally at this time of the year, what we need is refreshment. We need something icy cold. We used to go on holiday to Wales every year when I was a kid with my mum and dad, and stay in a caravan, and we used to go to a waterfall that we would climb up, and the best thing to do when you got to the top, be in your trainers or your walking boots, you get to the top and we'd whip off our socks and shoes and dangle our feet into the river at the top of the waterfall. And you get that lovely sort of rushing water sound, the babbling brook, and something just amazingly refreshing about being near water. Cool spring water is great for a physical refreshing, but what if we need an emotional refreshing or a mental refreshing? So I've been thinking about the things that have that effect on me. So while you're stitching this one, have a little think about what you need in order to be refreshed at the moment. Is there anything that you need more of in your life to offer you some refreshment? Maybe you're just worn out, tired, maybe you have been working really hard on something or thinking about something for ages. Maybe you've just had quite a rough time, and what would refresh you? So is it just treating yourself to a long bath with lots of bubbles and a good book? Maybe you need to go and hack about in the countryside and get out in nature. Maybe you need to go and see the sea. I do find being at the edge of land really powerfully refreshing. Seeing something new. Maybe you need to go and look at something different. If you need some artistic refreshment, maybe visit to a gallery or a exhibition or something would work a treat. Something like that. Maybe you need more sleep, so maybe it's changes to your bedtime routine. Have a think about what you can set as an intention that's going to offer you some refreshing in whatever way you need it at the moment. So I'm going to carry on stitching this and then make up my planet, and we'll come back and put our intention in. Okay, so here's my water droplet planet of refreshment. So I've used some pearl cotton and some stranded cotton, and this sort of icy blue is some Silco thread, and this time I've left the opening down here. Got some icy blue paper here, and I'm going to write Celestia refreshing, and I'm going to jot down my intentions for what I'm going to do more of for the rest of this month and for the rest of 2024 to make sure I am looking after myself and giving myself some moments where I can get some refreshment and sort of restoration. So I'm going to jot mine down and then we'll tuck them behind Planet Neptune. Okay, so that gets tucked inside. Might have to just fold it down once more, and in it goes. So we're on our last planet, and that is Saturn. So Saturn is obviously the ringed planet. So we're going to make our planet and then we're going to focus on how we're going to put some rings around it. Now Saturn is a yellow grey planet, and so I'm going to use this fabric here. It's another yarn dyed fabric. I thought we've used one, it might be nice to bring another one in. I'm going to just pick a little bit that offers me a bit of yellow and a bit of grey. So I think we're going to place it there. I think I'm going to running stitch it, and I'm going to use the lines on the fabric to just add a little bit of detail. So I've got this lovely variegated thread that's in shades of sort of yellow, orange, white, and it's got this greyish tinge to it. I think it works pretty well with the fabric. So I'm going to use that, and we're just going to do almost like sashiko stitching. So we're just going to do some straight running stitch lines and add a little bit of texture to the planet, and then we're going to make a twine that fits around it. So we'll make some twine in a minute. So I'm just going to do some running stitching on this. Might do it in 2 directions actually, just to add a little bit of variety. With running stitch, if you pull it tight, you will get a lovely little puckered quality to the stitches, or you can leave it flat. I mean, it kind of will pucker by itself anyway, and if you line up the stitches you will get kind of ridges running down, but I'm not too worried about that because we want to sort of, I don't want to overwhelm it because we're going to have our twine on. I could leave it like that, I think that's quite nice just as it is, but I'm going to work some running stitches in the other direction now. So what will happen is that every now and again my stitch will cross over one of the horizontal stitches that I've made, or maybe even 2 of the horizontal stitches that I've made, and I'm not worried about keeping them super straight, not worrying about that at all. And we'll make some little crosses which I think look quite cute. So Saturn was the Roman god of time. Agriculture was one of his as well, and abundance, things like that. Saturn had 2 female counterparts. My understanding is that the story is that he had 2 wives, and their names were Lua and Ops. And Lua was the scary one. So she was the goddess of destruction, and Ops was her opposite. She was the goddess of abundance. And I thought, what a strange pairing that you would have one goddess that was all about building things up and the other one that was all about tearing things down. But actually I think sometimes you need the 2 together, don't you? So sometimes you have to tear something down in order to build something up, and so that is what we're going to think about as we're stitching this one. So the question I have for you to ponder is there anything in your life that needs to be torn down in order to make room for growth? So this is all really about pruning, isn't it? So roses tend to flower much better if you prune them back. The branches of them grow stronger and more robust, and so they can support more in the way of flowers. And sometimes that's what's necessary, isn't it, in life? We have to cut something back quite brutally to be able to make room for future growth. I think the most obvious thing for me that I can relate to this is my teaching job, and I won't always keep going on about my teaching, but has been a major thing in my life. I think I got to the point of realising that Feather Stitch House and this channel and everything that I want to do with Feather Stitch House was never going to grow unless something gave. So something had to give, and so I had to prune back that teaching career that I'd been sort of staying safe in for such a long time in order to make room for Feather Stitch House to take flight, really. So I'm sure that many of you out there can relate to this, So is there anything at the moment in your life that is just taking up too much space? Maybe it's grown wild and you're going to have to cut it back in order to grow effectively in the future. So that's our point to ponder while we're stitching Saturn together. Where are we looking for growth in our life and what's holding it back? So we're thinking about Lua and Ops, the two wives of Saturn, destruction and abundance. And let's think about what we need to destroy or tear down or prune back in order for abundance to come. I've made up my planet. I haven't sewn it on yet because I want to catch my rings underneath it. I'm going to stitch it at a bit of an angle like that. So I'm just leaving that there for a minute, and I've got here some strands of thread. So I've got some of my yellow variegated that I've stitched this with. I've got a light grey and a dark grey, and what I'm going to do is just make a loop at the end and just tie a really simple knot. I want a loop. So there we go. Got my little loop at that end, and I'm going to do the same at the other end. Now this is not an original technique. I learnt this from somebody called Anne Brooke, handmade by Anne, and don't know whether she's got a tutorial on YouTube or not, but this is how I'm going to do it. So I've got my 3 strands of thread, loop at both ends, and you want a weight for the middle. So I've got a little book ring here, anything would do. You can put a pair of scissors, and this end I'm going to catch in place. So I'm just going to hook it just off camera onto something in my pen pot. So I've just got a pen pot over here, and I'm going to hook that loop onto one of the pens in my pen pot. I'm just going to catch it underneath there. So I've got my ring. I'll bring it a bit closer so you can see more of it. So we're going to be working diagonally across. There we go, like that. So you want to anchor that one end. You could hook it onto a door handle, that would be fine. And this end I'm going to hold in my hand like this, and I'm just going to pop a pencil through like that, and I'm going to start twisting, and I'm hoping that you'll be able to see what's happening as I go along. So hopefully you can see that thread is starting to twist up along its length, and every now and again you want to just let the weight drop down and then come back to the middle, just to allow the twist to move from this side of your weight to the other side. So I'm just twisting, 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 and you want it to be pretty thoroughly twisted. And let's just move that weight, and it just evens out the threads. Now you can do this with a great long piece of thread, but we only need a little bit, so I'm just going to make a short piece here. I do quite like this colour combination. So I'm just going to keep twisting, so holding the loop in my hand, making a little sort of wing knot, I suppose. And I think that'll pretty much do. So at this point I'm going to unanchor the other end, and I'm just going to hang it, and you'll see that it twists up on itself. like that. And so you get a sort of double twisted twine, and that's exactly what we want. And so I can now unanchor. So this is why I've used a book ring, because I can open it up to release that loop. Really handy little bit of kit there, and that won't really untwist itself now, but if you want to, you can just put a little knot at the end, so just ahead of those loops, just putting a little knot there to hold that in place, and then I can trim that off. And there we've got our twisted cord with our different colours going through it. So that's going to be my rings of Saturn. So what I'm going to do is just decide where I'm going to put that. You can pin it if you want to. And I've just got some normal machine cotton here, and I'm going to anchor it onto the back of my planet. And then I'm going to hopefully get a couple of wraps around, and then I'm going to get the other end, the other loop there, and I'm going to anchor that as well. Now if my twine had been longer, I could bring it out to the side, but I'm happy enough with that like that, and I'm going to have the opening at the top here because I want to I don't want to have to navigate the ends of my rings to get my little note in. Okay, so we've got our little Saturn on with its rings, and the last thing we're going to do is add our intention. So we've got lure and ops, destruction and abundance. And so I'm going to write my intentions down, and then we'll pop it inside Saturn. So here's my little note, in it goes, and I'm just going to go around the edges of each planet and get rid of any of the heat erase pen that's still lurking around. Give it a bit of a press, and that's where we're up to at the end of this week. So we've got our 6 planet parade planets with little notes tucked inside. Let's just get them sticking out a little bit. Oh, there we go. We've got Mars and Neptune down here, and Saturn. So Jupiter, Mercury and Uranus last week, and this week we've done Mars, Neptune and Saturn. So that's where we're up to so far. Next week we're going to put our binding on and do some more work with the background, just to sort of bring it in line with our other panels. So I hope you've enjoyed that. We focused on our relationships with others last week, and this week we focused on our own growth and how we're going to set intentions to bring more life and joy and growth into our own lives personally. Do share your work at hashtag FSH Winging It 24 on Instagram, and if you want to share on Facebook and see what other people have been up to so far this year, we also have our Facebook group, and the information for that is in the description below. Thanks so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this and you want to do some other textural stitching, I will put a video up here, and down here I'll link the playlist to the whole of this series. So if you want to go back to the beginning that's the place to look. Have a great week stitching your 3 planets, and I will see you soon. Bye.